This is my first attempt at making a fireplace, and I wanted to reproduce this particular one for my dollhouse that I'm going to actually restore. And I'm starting to work on the dollhouse now, and I will film that. It has some chips and things off of the particle board that it's made out of. It's a Keystone of Boston 1937 dollhouse, and I bought it at an antique store some time ago, and it was $20, I think. I can remember now. And it came with some furniture with it. And I didn't know much about the Keystone dollhouses. I'm just learning all of this and just getting into miniatures at the level of dollhouses. I never had a dollhouse when I was a child. I had lots of Barbie dolls and Breyer horses and things like that. But I didn't have a dollhouse. And it's possible I didn't have one because I had the smallest bedroom in the world when I was growing up, and it wasn't even heated, and it was I was the youngest child, and I wasn't planned, and so they took a den and converted it into a bedroom for me. And literally, I hate to use that word literally, but the dresser in my bedroom and the bed almost touched at catty corner placement. It was that small. But I love that little bedroom, but there really wasn't room for a dollhouse in that little room. And so anyway, I've always had a fascination with dollhouses, and it's increased in recent years. And so this is my first attempt at making a reproduction. And I'll show you how I did it. So I will explain my process, and thanks for being patient with me, and I hope you stick with me on this. This is the fireplace that I'm going to reproduce, and what I did is I printed this off from the internet, and I am going to make it a 1/12 scale. So I went into Procreate, and I took the picture of the flames and the fire irons in front of it and reproduced several sizes just to make sure I got the right size. And because I wasn't absolutely sure what the size of that fireplace was, so I cut one out already. And I have some scrap cardboard that I'm going to use for the backing. And then I have some balsa wood. And the rest of it's balsa wood and a few other items that I'm going to put in. You see to the left, there's this little striped stick, and then there's a white stick. Those are actually lollipop sticks, and they're solid all the way through. So I'm going to use those as the pillars on the side. And I just drew a rough sketch of the fireplace on the outside of it. And now I'll just measure it and make sure I get it the right size. I picked up this measuring device at one of my antique store ventures last week, and it's already coming in handy. So I'm just going to continue to measure and make sure I get the proportions right. And I'm just using an X-Acto knife to trim it off. This is scrap cardboard from something I got in the mail recently, and I'm just going to use a piece of that on the back. It's pretty stiff, and I do like to reuse things like this. I save cardboard and waste plastic and fabric and all sorts of things, foam, and it's coming in handy. So now I'm just going to glue this together. And this is the wood glue I typically use. I just like it. It's a little bit thinner than some of the other brands, but I like it because it spreads really easily. It doesn't dry quite as fast, which for me is an advantage, at least in this case. And I'll just press that together, let that dry. Just making sure it gets pressed down really carefully. And I'll put that on there for now. I'll have to put something heavier on it later. Now this is the size chair, and that's also made by Kage. I'm not sure how to pronounce it. Kage. Somebody tell me. Is it Kage? Is it Kage? I don't know. But anyway, now I'm going to cut out the base and the top of the fireplace, the mantle. I've had this little miter and saw for many years. I bought it, I think, 20 years ago, and I've used it a lot, and the saw has remained pretty sharp. So I'm just going to go right ahead and do both pieces. I couldn't use the miter scissors for this. It was just too thick. And I'm making the mantle slightly smaller because in the original pictures that I looked at, the mantle looks slightly smaller than the base. Now the next thing is to cut these lollipop sticks. They're solid paper, and these will go along the edges of the fireplace to frame it in, and then I'll paint them after they're glued together. At first I tried to saw these, and I realized pretty quickly that the saw wasn't going to work well on the paper, so I changed my mind and got out the miter shears, and that worked much better. It did squish them a little bit at the ends, but I went back and pinched them back into shape before I glued them. And then I will paint them after they're set and sand them at the bottoms to make sure they're all even. And I'll have to put a couple of coats of paint on to cover those stripes. These were for a Halloween decoration that I bought some years ago, and I had a few left over. So they came in handy for this. And this is just some more balsa wood. And I had a hard time cutting this too, so I don't know what was going on. I just couldn't quite do it. I don't know why. So I got the miter shears out. I didn't want to do them with the miter shears because it pinches it at the end and tears it a little, but it was okay. I ended up putting some glue in the end, wood glue, and then sanding it, and you can't tell. The glue's set on the fireboard, so it's ready to be worked with. I'm just going to kind of put it together a little bit just to give you an idea about the first pieces going in. And now I'm just going to take some marker and go around the whole edge where the fire goes, the little picture of the fire and the fire irons, and just fill that in just to make sure there's no white gaps showing through. I could have painted this, but I thought marker might actually work a little better, and it was fast. And then these will go on the sides. And I'm just covering some of the ends of the paper because, you know, when you cut paper, sometimes you have those little white edges that show, and I just want to make sure there isn't any white edges. And again, I made this in Procreate. I took the picture from the original photograph that I showed you of the fireplace, took it into Procreate and reconstructed it to make it look just like the one that's on the original fireplace, the old one, the vintage one. And now I'm just getting some more paint. This is a very inexpensive paint that I bought at I think it was a yard sale some years ago, and it's lasted this long, and it has pretty good coverage, but I don't think it's an expensive paint. I don't even know if they still make that brand, but I do try to buy a lot of things at charity shops and resale shops and places like that, and rummage sales or jumble sales, whatever you want to call them. And sometimes I do find some pretty good things as far as art supplies are concerned. I've never found the paints, though, that I use for oil painting. I use Mussini oil paints for my oil paintings most of the time, unless I'm doing something for Christmas, like a Christmas ornament. But when I'm doing a serious painting, I use the Mussini Schminke oil paints and have for many years. They're very expensive, though, so I have to be very careful with them. So I'm just going over the edges again, make sure they're closed up. And I'm going to just sand the ends of everything and make sure there's no little ragged pieces hanging out. I'm just using an emery board and a sanding block. And I'm going to put the first coat of paint on. I'll give this 2 or 3 coats of paint, third if it needs it, and then I'll do touch-ups at the end. I just put a hat pin in there to hold it, so I didn't have to get too much paint on my hands. I already have plenty on my hands. And now I'm giving a second coat of paint to the little pillars on the side of the fireplace, decorative pillars. And I'll give another coat around the edge. Again, just to make sure it's closed up, as I used cardboard and balsa wood for the backing. And a little bit of golden paint. Again, I'm going to mix up some more. And I'm using the golden clear leveling gel to thin it, and a little bit of water. By the way, it's burnt sienna that I used and sap green. And so I just wanted a little bit darker brown. And I'm just going to give it a thorough mix. I'm putting some water in, you can't see from the edge there. I'm trying to get my work into the center of the picture. What I end up doing is I'm concentrating so hard on what I'm doing, I often start pulling the work closer to myself and getting out of camera view. And that's one of the things I have to learn about doing videos like this, so that I don't miss the steps, showing the steps. I didn't do this over because there was just enough of it there so you could see. But I'm going to be more careful, I promise, in the future as I learn to make demonstration videos. There's that little piece of paper again that I printed out for the fire. And that's part of the mantle. And I did give the upper mantle piece a coat of paint, as you saw. I let it dry. I'm going to sand it now, because when you paint it, it does make it a little easier to sand it the second time around. It hardens it, at least for balsa wood. So I'll repaint that again and go over some of the other pieces and sand those again. That one I had put a white coat of paint on, but it'll get a final coat of black. And I'll just go and do these again, make sure they're even, and get in the little grooves and take out any little bits of paper that might be still clinging. And the mantle piece again, and it'll get another coat of paint as well. So some of these pieces I ended up giving 3 coats of paint to, others just 2. I did change the color of the mantelpiece a little bit. The one that I looked at in the photo seemed to have a redder hue to the wood color, but I went along with a more natural look rather than just make it, too red. So this is the color I ended up with. And as I said, I'll go back when this is all finished and touch up everything again, just to make sure everything's closed up. There's that paint again, the cream color. There's still quite a bit of it left in that bottle. It was almost a full bottle when I picked it up. And I'm going to just paint these again. This is the third coat. Just have to make sure that striped stuff gets completely covered. I'm just stabbing a X-Acto knife into it and holding it that way. Makes it a little easier. And that's part of the mantle again. And the glue hardened on the end, so you can't tell that it was kind of pinched and ragged from when I used the miter scissors. And this is actually the base, and that's going to be black. And I'm using golden paint again. And I'm going to paint both sides because why not? Again, I apologize for not getting the objects clearly in the center, but as I said, I'm learning, and I just have to make sure I do that the next time. All right, that's what the fireplace looks like, 1937 version, and I'm going to put this together. I'm going to just outline this one more time to make sure it all gets covered. And then I'm going to glue this down. Just want to make sure it lines up. Yep. And there's the pieces separated. I'm going to use some PVA glue. This isn't just regular like Elmer's glue. This is actually bookbinding glue. And the reason why I'm using it is once you put it down, give it a nice thin coat, it's a little more flexible and you don't tend to get wrinkled paper with it. So I'm going to put that down. It will dry completely clear. So I know it looks like it's blue above the black, but that will go away. And now I'm going to glue on the sides with wood glue. Just want to make sure I get them in the right position. And I'm just touching it around the edges just to make sure those little paper edges aren't curled up at all. And that will lay flat. And then I'll put that piece on top that goes under the mantle. And now that's the mantle. And it gets glued on top of that little white piece. And then the bottom will get glued on, which is the black piece. And I'm just putting the glue on around the top. Whoops, that popped off, but that's not a problem. And just glue it together. Just have to make sure I position it. And this wood glue dries relatively clear, but I'll have to touch it up again afterwards, especially along the bottom, because it isn't clear enough. And then there's the mantle. I'll just put a little bit of glue on that, just along the edge. There. Okay, this is almost done. It just needs to have some touch up after the wood glue is dry. And now it's dry. and I'll compare it to the picture. I've touched it up. It has set overnight, and I think I got pretty close to the original. Please tell me what you think about this video, if this was helpful or not. And in the future, I'm going to be making more of this reproduction furniture. The next one is going to be the chair that's from the same company that you saw in the beginning. And then I'm going to make a couch after that. And then I don't know what I'll do after that, but I'm sure I'll figure that out as time goes by. This encouraged me a lot, so I think I'll just step right out and do the chair next. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.